How many people here are keeping up with their Proverbs reading? Okay, good. Oh, more and more every time. That's excellent. It's God's infinite wisdom downloaded to you every morning. Why wouldn't you do that? I don't know why you wouldn't do that. And theologians, when they look at the book of Proverbs, it's somewhat of an anomaly, right? The wisdom literature in the Bible. And while the rest of the Bible pertains to the sudden, violent coming of the kingdom of God and Israel's election as God's people and the messianic covenant, wisdom literature doesn't talk about that. It's not a presentation of the gospel as we would expect, but it does describe God's attributes, the same as Moses and the prophets. It's a monotheistic. There's one God, and that God is creator of the universe. That God knows our ways and will comfort us. That God is sovereign, and he's directing history. That God is merciful. That God hates iniquity. God will discipline his children and answer our prayers. So while the book of Proverbs would not be viewed very valuably theologically, but it is invaluable practically. Because this is how life works. How many of you read the directions when you receive something? They read the directions. I had a friend, Chuck does, reads the directions. Good, he's my dentist. I hope he reads the directions. Well, let's just see what happens. I want him going in with a plan. I had a friend bought a CD player, and she's like, it don't work. You're putting it upside down, and you have to press play. That's really... But Proverbs, this is what works in life. This is how life works. Read a proverb a day till the end of the month and then go back to the beginning. Invaluable wisdom every single day. If you miss a day, look, I've been doing it for 47 years. If you miss a day, it's all right. Go on to the next day. You read a proverb every single day. Today's the 24th, so the Proverbs 24, what stood out to me, and I read this every time I do a wedding. Proverbs 24, 3 through 4. It says, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. That has always impacted me. That's why I use it every time I do a wedding. I was watching a video of a 3D printer building a house. Do we have that video?
This guy spent $500,000 for this machine to 3D print his entire house. It prints the walls in layers using concrete, which is durable enough to last up to 300 years. The hollow walls allow for easier installation of plumbing and wiring. Steel reinforcements and spray foam add strength, soundproofing, and insulation. Because the machine does most of the work, minimal labor is needed, saving up to 45% in costs. And it's also much faster to build. You could move in within a few days to 3 weeks, depending on the house size.
That's amazing, isn't it? I love that. Video has nothing to do with what I'm talking about today, but I just thought it was so cool. We can build a house in a couple of days. Actually, we were walking through our neighborhood one night, and my wife says, when did that house get there? It's always been there. No, it wasn't there yesterday. It had to be there yesterday. I mean, they can build it in a couple of days, but not overnight. You want a house that'll stand generations?
Yes, amen.
Use wisdom as the architect. And the starting point of a solid marriage is a fear of God.
Yes.
French author André Marwal said a successful marriage is an edifice that must be rebuilt every day. It's not a one-time construction job, but a continual process of renovation, daily care, commitment, and adaptability. That's what Landmark Marriages is about. A quarterly rhythm with practical disciplines to renovate on a regular basis, and a crew of certified specialists to help and guide and strengthen marriages here at Landmark. The goal is to have a home where the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. And what does that mean? Rooms filled with precious and pleasant riches. Dwayne Garrett, in his commentary on Proverbs, says the precious jewels that fill the house are harmonious, loving family and a sense of security and stability. Would you want that? Who wouldn't want that? A harmonious, loving family with a sense of security and stability. I think we'd all want that. It's about setting a higher standard for your marriage. That's what Landmark Marriages is about. See, the thing about standards is you define them, you refine them, and you work them. And then your standards pull you. The question is, what's your standard? We're doing fine, we'll just drift along. Nobody drifts to success, period. You may never reach your goals, but you will always reach your standards. Raise your standards for your marriage, and we'll see you in November. You can sign up on September 7th. That's when it begins. So we'll find ourselves, we're going to finish Proverbs 12 today, finally. I'm taking as much time as I can to get through Proverbs because Becky said, you're not going to die till you finish Proverbs. So you guys are going to be here for a long time. Now, the object of life is to hold off death for as long as possible, isn't it? So we left off in Proverbs. We start today at Proverbs 12, verse 17. He who speaks truth declares righteousness, but a false witness, deceit. Dallas Willard, in his book, The Spirit of the Disciplines, writes, the most important thing in your life is not what you do, it's who you become. That's what you will take with you into eternity. Throughout history, truth has always been the highest form of virtue. But truth, in some circumstances, exposes us to judgment. If you knew all of the truth about me, I wouldn't be as great as I appear. No. But, who cares, right? Who cares about the truth? We all do. And we ask ourselves, where in my life am I tempted to soften or avoid the truth for comfort's sake? See, there was a time in my life when my life was absolutely falling apart. I really didn't see a reason to live anymore. And I had drifted away from the faith. But I didn't share that with anyone. Because what would you think? He's not perfect. I was pulling away from others, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, in order to not face the truth. The truth was that there was nothing perfect about my life, and I had to change. And somebody told me about a meeting, adult children of alcoholics, up in Toms River. So I drove up there, and for the first time in my life, I was honest. Now, what I did was actually vomit upon a whole bunch of strangers, but for the first time in my life, I was honest about what was going through my heart, what was going on in my life. And in this one voice, the group that we've been doing for the past 15 years, the healing begins when we risk moving out of isolation. Last week we had we have a meeting online, a Zoom meeting. We have 2 guys that come from Australia now. Is that amazing? It's an international ministry. Last week we did an exercise. We took a look at, thought of a picture of yourself when you were younger. And what would you say to your younger self? That was so powerful. I've been thinking about that all week long. I couldn't talk. I couldn't. I was going to bust out crying. It was so painful. But the people, we have a great group, and they encouraged me to share. In John chapter 4, Jesus encounters the woman at the well. He confronts her about the reality of her life, the truth. She evades the truth and changes the subject. See, avoiding the truth is a natural instinct when we're facing guilt, shame, uncertainty, or pain. But Jesus responds with truth and grace, drawing her into a transformative encounter. Healing begins when we risk moving out of isolation. The moment she stops avoiding and accepts the truth, she becomes empowered, bold enough to run back to town and testify and start a revival. When I accepted the truth about my circumstances and became willing to share, my life began to transform, and I became empowered to share that truth with others. And now we minister to people all over the world. It's a powerful group of people, honest, vulnerable, brave, courageous people. And Solomon says the truth declares righteousness. Speaking truth is morally powerful. It's scary, right? It can be risky. When we speak truth, do our words declare truth and righteousness, or do they serve our own interests? Am I willing to speak truth even when it's inconvenient or costly? Do I seek truth? Truth-telling as a form of witness to righteousness, or just not being accurate? Winston Churchill once said, truth is incontrovertible. Can't move it. Malice may attack it. Ignorance may deride it. But in the end, there it is.
Still there.
In the end, there it is. The question this morning for each one of us, have we faced the truth? Have we faced the truth about our lives, about our souls? We move on to Proverbs 12:18. Solomon says, there's one who speaks like the piercing of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes health. A number of years ago, I was at a family function. It was a family reunion. And I overheard two of my cousins, talking about me, and it wasn't nice. It was kind of disturbing to me. I wasn't eavesdropping. It's just that where I was standing, I could hear them. And it wasn't something that I could argue with them about, because it was how they felt about me. And it hurt. And it hurt especially bad because the people that were speaking I held in high regard. I still do today. But since that day, something changed. I know in no uncertain terms what they really thought about me. As something was taken away that day, it cut deep. Listen, I can be abrupt. My wife will tell you. My counselor will tell you. My words can cut. And listen, that's not an attribute. That's being lazy. And I've been challenged to focus on gentleness, because the truth can hurt people. You know, I had a friend, Paul Bruno. He would tell you the truth, but he'd be terrible. You'd just say, hey, man, you got pimples. Okay, you know what? Thanks. I know. I have mirrors at home. I can see. It's a challenge for me. And I say, you know, Paul, that hurts. That truth hurts. Well, that's all your truth ever does, Paul, is hurt. Is that all your truth ever does? Hurt? See, the questions I need to ask myself, is this going to build up, or is it going to tear down? That's one or the other. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, Paul says, but only such as is good for building up. You want to build up people, not tear them down. It helps me to pause and choose my words and strengthen rather than wound. But it also causes me to make amends when I say the wrong thing. Because I can be flippant and unfailing in trying to say something funny. But I want to encourage people rather than discourage them. Do my words feel like swords, or that wound, or a balm that heals to those who hear them? When I speak truth, do I do it in love, or do I just use it to cut others down? You know, we used to sit on the stairs when I was a kid and listen to my mom and dad argue, which was about every night. And my dad would get louder and louder, and my mom would stay calm and just cut him up. It's like he had no chance. When I speak truth, do I do it in love? Do I do it to cut others down? Paul says in 1 Corinthians, let all you do be done in love. Checks whether your tone and motive are about care of the other person or hurting them. Don't be careless with our words. Third question is, would I say this the same if Jesus was standing beside me? That's a good one. If Jesus were with me, would I say this? Let your speech always be gracious, Paul says in Colossians, seasoned with salt. How can I grow wise in my speech to build others up? That's the challenge. We go to Proverbs 12:19. The truthful lip shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Adam Clarke's commentary on Proverbs, he writes, truth stands forever because its foundation is indestructible. But falsehood may soon be detected. And though it gained credit for a while, it had that credit because it was supposed to be truth. Wow. It gains the credit in our souls because it's supposed to be truth. Look at the truth of the gospel. It stands the test of time. First of all, with biblical sources. Now you can say, well, that could be circular knowledge. And I get, use the Bible to prove the Bible. But we have historical sources. There's a great book written by an archaeologist called The Stones Cry Out, about the truth of the gospel uncovered as we do more archaeology. It stands for logical reasons. Simon Greenleaf, in his book, The Testimony of the Evangelist, he applies courtroom standards to the Gospels and concluded that the evangelists were credible, truthful witnesses, more than most that he had ever seen. And we have non-Christian resources, right? We have Tacitus, a Roman historian. We have Josephus, a Jewish historian. They weren't preaching the gospel. We have Pliny the Younger, a Roman governor. We have the Babylonian Talmud, or Jewish rabbinical writings talking about Jesus as a heretic. The truthful lip, Solomon says, will be established forever. And we have our lives. Solomon tells us there's a transient nature to lies. A lying tongue is but for a moment. While lies can seem powerful in the moment, they rarely endure. In the 1980s, one of the largest lies was birthed in the financial sector, Bernie Madoff. Fraudulent investment fund where year after year showed impressive returns. The reports were remarkably real. I remember seeing an interview with a guy who was an investment banker, and he said, look, I looked at these reports. I look at these all day long. These looked real. He was investigated by the SEC, and they found nothing. His scheme unraveled, though, in 2008. It never lasts forever. And investors lost billions. The world was rocked by the lies of Bernie Madoff. And although the lies continued for decades, they were eventually found out. 2 decades of deception built on trust and reputation because it was supposed to be true. Solomon's saying that the truth will stand the test of time and scrutiny, but a lie will be exposed. And with various degrees, we see the depth and damage and the duration of the damage. But in the end, what does Churchill say? In the end, there it is. There's the truth. We go to Proverbs 12:20 through 22. Deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil, but counselors of peace have joy. No grave trouble will overtake the righteous, but the wicked shall be filled with evil. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are his delight. Listen, Pastor Gene just said, wow, that is wow. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. Solomon shows us the contrast of the inner core of those who plot evil and inflict pain to those who give good counsel and promote good. Deceit, he says, is at the inner core of those who bring trouble, while joy is at the inner core of those who bring peace. John 10:10, Jesus says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But you don't get that without practicing some deceit. I mean, who would follow a guy? Hey, how you doing? I'm here to destroy your life and steal any possible chance of peace and joy. Let's go. Now, there are people who say, okay. But most people don't. What, you know how it starts? Come on, it's fun. Everybody's doing it. No one would take the deal if they knew the truth. But it starts out like fun. But you get too far down the road, you're like, wow, I can't go back. But here's the really scary thing. When the thief comes to bring destruction, he tends to hang around for a while. In fact, generations. Last week, Matthew talked about two families, Jonathan Edwards' family and the Jukes family. And you see the study. The Jonathan Edwards family based on gospel truths. The Jukes family based on dysfunction. And studies of destructive evil patterns versus successful family patterns. And these patterns are ingrained in the fabric of the families and affect generations. The thief comes to destroy. You think he only comes to destroy you? No, he's hanging out for a while. The Dugdale study on the Jukes family inspired the practice of eugenics. So the government, looking at the study of generational dysfunction, say, hey, you know what? We ought to sterilize these people. Nobody thought, hey, let's give them the gospel. They didn't think to do that because the government never thinks to do that. The Cambridge study on delinquent development. Boys convicted with fathers were 3 times more likely to be convicted themselves. The Transiv study in the Netherlands. The children of convicted parents are nearly 2 times higher odds of becoming offenders themselves, with risk of increasing across generations. And the Oregon Youth Study, where sons whose parents had multiple arrests were more likely to be arrested themselves in adulthood. Numerous studies support what Solomon is saying, that the wicked shall be filled with evil, and they will be filled with evil for generations. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 15, for out of the heart come evil thoughts, murders, acts of adultery, other immoral sexual acts, thefts, false testimonies, and slanderous statements. Placing deceit among the sinful impulses that we all possess is the core of the evil person. And here's what the thief brings. Internal conflict or sinful inclinations, not joy or peace. The moral, spiritual consequences of their actions, family disruptive patterns. And he brings divine judgment, including final destruction. When I went to Emotionally Healthy Spirituality in New York City, and I was taught how to teach the class, one of the exercises is to look at a genogram, which shows patterns in the generations of your family. When I looked at those patterns, man, it grieved me. Just terrible patterns of dysfunction, addiction. But here's the good news. Deceitful patterns can be broken. See, the fact that my genogram looks that way doesn't mean that my descendants have to act that way. A good environment matters. The gospel in a family matters. Christ breaks destructive patterns. Here's what we tell everybody in this one voice. And if you want to come on Tuesday nights, you're joined to even just come to one session on Zoom. But here's what we tell. You get to be the hero. You get to be the hero in your family. On the day that I was baptized, September 10th, 1978, Mr. Kelly told me, you just changed your family tree because you invited eternity. Wow. You can be the hero in your family, no matter what your descendants look like or your ancestors look like. Your descendants don't have to look that way. Transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. The words of his mouth are trouble and deceit. The inclination of our hearts leads to evil rather than peace and joy if we listen to the thief. But look at what Solomon says. No grave trouble will overtake the righteous. Paul says in Romans 8:28, and we know that God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love God. Not for everybody, but for the good of those who love God and those called according to his purpose. Now look, here's the truth. Not all things are good. Some things are downright horrible. But all things will be worked together for the good. You don't see it at the time, but God works it out. God's divine providence is absolutely limited. limitless. That's the reassurance. Those who deal truthfully are his delight. This indicates that God has genuine pleasure in people who are honest, trustworthy, and consistent in word and deed. Paul House, in his book, Old Testament Theology, writes, God's blessings never leave the righteous. God's blessings never leave the righteous. But they sometimes unfold in the midst of stressful and distressing circumstances. Yes, that's true. We do have distressing circumstances, but God's mercy never leaves us. As we move on to Proverbs 12:23, a prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims foolishness. In leadership, quietness doesn't signal weakness. It often signals depth. Paul Tripp, in his book on leadership, writes, the best kind of leadership is invisible. If you're yapping your mouth, you aren't listening. If you aren't listening, you aren't learning. And you know what? If you ain't learning, you ain't leading. There are some powerful practical applications to Solomon's wisdom here. There's a book called Quiet Leadership by Dave Rocks. Great book. Steps to transforming our performance as leaders. And the leadership model is grounded in emphasizing the importance of listening, reflection, and inquiry. He says, we need to improve thinking, not dictate actions. We need to create safe spaces for insight. We need to empower people through questioning and focus on solutions and accentuate the power and the positive in each person. Now listen, a fool can't do that. That's what Solomon said. A fool can't do it. His heart is bound in foolishness. A fool needs to talk. Plato said in 400 BC, wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. A fool has a need to proclaim his foolishness because of pride, because of insecurity, and because of lack of understanding. You ever meet that guy? This guy has no self-awareness. A fool proclaims his foolishness by frequent self-disclosure, by interrupting others, by over-explaining, and by avoiding silence. We used to talk in sales, in insurance sales. Next one who talks loses. And that is it. You do your presentation, you sit there and you look at them. That is uncomfortable for you, but it's a lot more uncomfortable for them. But a fool begins to talk and loses the sale. In Proverbs 12:24, Solomon says, the hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy man will be put to forced labor. The diligent, those who govern themselves, can retain their independence and come to a position of leadership and rule. Discipline is about developing a routine, a structure, and habits that elevate your life. See, Proverbs is about what makes life work. It's about exercising those routines, those structures, and those habits. See, discipline is writing the blueprint for the finished home. Diligence is banging the nails every single day to build that home. When we coach people, we help them create a compelling future for themselves and find purpose. And then we give them the routines and the disciplines that they have to exercise every single day. See, diligence is practicing those routines every day. In Proverbs, diligence aligns with God's order, rewarding those who cultivate that's how life works. You've got to be diligent. The diligent person will do the things that the lazy person doesn't want to do. And here's the key. The diligent person doesn't want to do them either. But they do it anyway. Like reading. I don't like to read. Okay. I like to read, but it's not whether you like to read or not. Warren Buffett says, wealthy people have big libraries. Poor people have big televisions. That shock you, Gene? He's going to sell his television today. That's the way I get your television. So I'm giving it to you.
I gotta go back to my 27-inch?
Yes. No. You got to be more focused on education than entertainment. Solomon says the lazy man will be put to forced labor because he's unfit to rule over others. The lazy man will be ruled over by others. We go over to the high school in mainland and do FCA. And we teach the teenagers, the high school kids, FCA. And it was one, I was teaching them how to set goals and how to set rituals every single day that you can practice to fulfill those goals. And I gave every single one of them a journal. I bought journals for them and I gave them to them. And I taught them how to write in their goals, and I taught them the discipline that I use and the diligence that I exercise every single day. And after a couple of weeks, I came back, I said, hey, who's got their journals? And only a few had their journals. And I said, well, who's been working on their rituals to accomplish their goals? And a few hands went up. And I told the rest of the kids, look around. See those hands? See those hands? Make friends with them because you're going to be working for them. They're going to be your boss. So how do you get motivated? See, here's the thing. Motivation is not reliable. Jim Rohn used to say, I can motivate a stupid person, but now I've got a motivated stupid person. You gotta move forward and stop waiting to feel ready. I don't feel ready, right? We talk about exercise. You wake up in the morning and you go mind over mattress and you do something. Action, even when you don't feel like it, that's what transforms you. Lazy, unfocused people don't do that. They blame, they complain, and they make excuses. Hey, next year, you'll either have more successes or more excuses. What do you want? We can help you turn that around because in the care team, in Landmark Care Team, we have coaching, life coaching. It's going to be a basic staple for the Wellness Center, but we can do it now. If you want to be coached by somebody, we'll set you up with a coach, and they'll show you how to achieve your goals. In Proverbs 12:25, it says, anxiety in the heart of a man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad. I love this verse because it is so true. 2,900 years ago, Solomon recognized the power of anxiety. Anybody here have experienced anxiety? Yeah, some of you experience anxiety right now. When is this idiot going to end? He goes on forever. Now you know why my children left home. It was a great day. I have 6 children, and people used to tell me, you know, you're going to miss them when they're gone. And I said, you know, I'm not. And you know what? I don't. I love them, but I don't want to live with them anymore. Some people have anxiety, and some people are carriers, right? My dad was a carrier of anxiety. He'd walk in the room and you just felt anxious. It's such a powerful revelation by Solomon, though, right? Anxiety reverberates to us body, soul, and spirit. Physically, anxiety causes digestive issues, brain-gut axis. Read Childhood Disrupted. Talks about how anxiety causes gastrointestinal problems. It causes muscle tension and aches, cardiovascular effects. I asked my doctor, I went to my cardiologist and I said, hey, have you ever read this report on anxiety and adult adverse childhood reactions, how it affects people in their adulthood? Nope, I've never read that. Here's a prescription. So no, you got to read this. You got to read this because you deal with people with heart problems, and anxiety causes those heart problems in a lot of cases. You should know this. So I gave him the report. It causes neurological and sensory symptoms, and it causes chronic immune disease and systematic impacts. Anxiety. Body, soul, and spirit. In the soul, emotional isolation. Anxiety can make us turn inward and trap us in this rumination and spiritual disconnection. Anxiety often disrupts our spiritual peace. We'll stop reading, we'll stop reaching out, spiritual distress and disconnection, spiritual struggles. Anxiety can impede spiritual growth and facilitate it. Dan Allender, in his book, The Cry of the Soul, a psychological study of the Psalms, he says our emotions connect our inner world to the ups and downs of life. Sometimes the connection is more than we can bear. Tuesday night, when I connected with that young Terence and told him what I would want him to hear, it was almost more than I could bear. Anxiety in our hearts can certainly weigh us down. But what does Solomon say? He doesn't leave us there. Anxiety in your heart weigh you down. See him. He doesn't leave us there. What does he say? But a good word will lift you up. A good word will make you glad. Listen, don't leave your support group, whatever it is. Don't isolate. Don't leave your recovery group. Don't leave your connect group. Don't leave your disciple group. Don't leave the people who support you. Don't leave them. It'll weigh you down. But the good word, Psalm 42, verse 5 through 6, my soul, why are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God. For I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God. Psalm 56, when you're having fear in the face of threats, trust in God. He replaces the fear. Psalm 94, when you're having anxious thoughts, God brings joy and peace. Psalm 61, feeling overwhelmed and faint-hearted, God is our refuge and our stronghold. Psalm 46, fear from chaotic circumstances. Be still. God is sovereign. God is unshakable. That is the good word. As we move to Proverbs 12:26, the righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. I mean, truly, you take a look at my friends when I was a teenager, you could pretty much gauge my future. Something miraculous happened, though. But Miles Monroe, in his book, Maximizing Your Potential, he says healthy relationships should always begin at the spiritual and intellectual levels. The levels of purpose, motivation, interests, dreams, and personality. You are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. That is true. If there's 4 complainers, you're going to be the 5th. So we need to conduct an inventory of the people we're spending time with. It's not heartless. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It just means that you wouldn't sit around and have them cough on you all day. But that's what they're doing, infecting you. Who am I around? Who are the people I spend most of my time with? List everyone who has influence over you, deliberately or otherwise. What are these associations doing to me? Reflect on how they shape your actions, your thinking, your emotions, and overall trajectory. And then ask yourself, is that okay? I mean, who am I hanging around with? What are they doing to me? Is that okay? Are they lifting me up? Are they inspiring me? Or are they taking me down? Consider if these relationships help or hinder your growth. It's hard but necessary evaluation. Some associations we need to end. I did. My first day at college. I mean, I was a jerk in high school. And I don't know how I made it through high school. And either do my teachers. But, and my mother. Okay. But I fooled around. I messed around. I didn't pay attention. I didn't do homework. I didn't go to class. I got high most days and then went to school. My first day at college. I was walking from class, walking through the parking lot to my car, and I said, that Terence ain't going to make it here. I got to go to class. I got to study. I can't show up high. I've got to be a different Terence. And I had to work to pay for college. So I had no time for my old friends. And that was a good thing. Some associations we need to end. We just need to end them. Some associations we need to limit. Just limit the influence in your life. And some associations we need to start. Find somebody who's ahead on the road than you and chase them. Now, you may never catch them. That's all right. Spend the rest of your life chasing them. I have the person that I want to be. I call it that guy. And I'm chasing that guy all the time. I am not that guy yet.
But you will be.
Well, let's hope. Next 100 years doing Proverbs. I got 100 years to... Proverbs 12:27. The lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting, but diligence is man's precious possession. Solomon uses this ridiculous illustration, right? The lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting. Here's a guy, he takes the trouble to get all together. Anybody here hunt? You don't just go out and hunt, right? There's a setup, the whole thing. There's a lot of diligence goes into that. He goes through all the trouble of hunting and catching his prey, but he's too lazy to cook it. He never enjoys the fruit of his labor because he's too lazy to cook. How many people here have unfinished projects in their lives? Okay, the rest of you are liars. It's okay. It's all right. I'm here to point out the truth for you. I've got unfinished projects. Why don't we finish our projects? We procrastinate. We wait till we're ready, right? The difference between interest and commitment. You know, there's a difference between interest and commitment. Interest means you'll do it when it's convenient. Commitment means you'll do it whatever it takes. Your people are interested in getting better emotionally, right? They're interested in dealing with the stuff that they have from childhood. So they'll come to this one voice for a couple of times. For a couple of times. Commitment is 15 years. That's commitment. It takes more than interest to build a cathedral. You want your life to look like a masterpiece, you got to have commitment. And that's what Solomon's saying. There's so many unfinished lives. But diligence, he says, is a precious possession. I talk a lot about diligence. Why? Because it's important. And it's a precious possession. There's so many things we can possess, but Solomon says this is a precious possession. It's provision and satisfaction through diligence. God blesses the diligent with plenty. I was out to lunch one day with Dave Allegretto. I know many of you may know Dave. It's my boss is Laney. Well, we kind of do the care team together, but everybody looks at her as my boss. And I'm all right because she takes the blame for everything that goes wrong. But Dave and I were out to lunch, and he was talking about how he built his business. It was years and years of calls and connecting with people, going out to dinners, going to places, bringing, anybody who builds a business knows this, but there's a thing called the flywheel, right? If you've ever read the book Good to Great, he calls the flywheel. The flywheel goes. Now it's just going by itself. But the diligence to get to that point, it leads to leadership and honor. It lifts a person into influence, a diligent person. Stewardship and value. Diligence preserves and enriches what is gained. It grows. There is no possession that is more valuable than diligence. Lastly, Proverbs 12:28. In the way of righteousness is life, and in its pathway there is no death. It's common belief that the way of righteousness is boring and unpleasant. You know, we had these friends, and their family was normal, right? They were normal Christian people, and they creeped me out. So I was uncomfortable over there. The kids were good. The parents were, nice to each other. There was no chaos, no yelling. And they were a righteous, functional family. And there was a way to their life, and they took me in and mentored me. And I got to tell you something, and this is absolute truth. I'm here today mostly because of them. Because Georgina and Bill Cameron took me in and mentored me. Question is, who's pouring into your life? Are they genuine, righteous people? Solomon says, follow the path of righteousness. Follow the path of righteousness. Have the people in your life that lead you into righteousness. They ain't many. They ain't a lot. So you find them out. Just to recap today, I want you to think about a couple of questions. Are you facing the truth about yourself? We're really good on the truth about everybody else, aren't we? What about the truth about ourselves? When you turn inward, are you facing the truth about yourself? Do your words feel like swords that cut or balm that heals? Do I act like a fool has to say something, or a leader who has something to say? Who are my mentors? Hey, do you have mentors? If you don't have mentors, find a mentor. Who holds me accountable? And where can I grow in more diligence to uplift my life and the lives of those around me, right? High tide lifts all boats. There's going to be members of the care team up here in front. They'll be here to pray for you. Anything you want to pray about, look for the lanyards. But I want to pray over you the Aaronic Aaron blessing. And God gives Moses this blessing, and he says, have Aaron bless the people so that when he does that, he puts my name on them to be identified with who he is and his nature. You know, we put a lot of names on ourselves, right? Don't we? Eagles, Giants, Packers, right? Adidas. There's names. Everybody's wearing a name. You're wearing a name. You're wearing a name. Everybody's got insignias on them and names. We're walking billboards. But God says, I want to put my name on you. And so this morning, I want to put God's name on you. He wants to bless us, and he wants us to walk out with his name on him. Could you bow your heads? The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.